So El Tráfico just ended a couple of seconds ago, and just a little spoiler alert, the Galaxy of course won that one 3-1, and I take no responsibility for potentially jinxing LAFC by wearing an LAFC jersey when I did the preview yesterday of that game. If you're an LAFC fan and you're mad at me because of that, well, sorry I guess, but either way, let's actually now talk about the last 6 games of this weekend games, and that, as I said yesterday, I am doing something that I have never done before with the preview, which is splitting it into 2 parts. And now I'm going to be looking at the last 2 games of Saturday and also the 4 games that's going to be happening on Sunday, including another big derby and probably the biggest derby in MLS, known as the Cascadia Derby between Seattle and Portland. But of course, stay tuned for that, as I'm going to be talking about that last. But if you don't want to stay tuned, or that you're kind of impatient in terms of me want to talk straight away about the Cascadia Derby, then I will put the timestamp right at the comments below, where you can of course click on the timestamp when I'm talking about the Cascadia Derby. But that being said, let's actually talk about the next match that is happening in MLS Matchweek. Usually I talk about the first match of MLS Matchweek, whatever. But this week, since I split the video in half, we're going to continue to where we left off last week, where we were talking about the 6th match of MLS Matchweek number 20, to now talk about the 7th match of MLS Matchweek number 20, which is RSL versus Minnesota. RSL, their record is 9-2-9, while Minnesota, their record is 10-3-7, and RSL, of course, won 5 in a row coming into this game at home against Minnesota, while Minnesota have won 7 in a row in all competitions. So something's gonna have to give in terms of this game, and that both of these teams are carrying some really hot streak in terms of coming into this game, and that something probably might give in this one. In terms of the top assist leader for RSL, Krylak, Rusnak, and Herrera all ties at 3 assists. Beasler currently have 2 assists. That's Nick Beasler, by the way. Then you got Salcedo currently with 2 assists for RSL. For Minnesota, Gregish currently have 7 assists with this team. Metinier, who is coming back from his national team duty with Madagascar, is currently second in the assist chart for Minnesota with 6 assists. Quintero currently have 5 assists. Finley has 4 assists, and Mason Toy rounds up the list with 2 assists. But like I said, this is a matchup of 2 teams that is definitely on a very hot streak, with RSL being just kind of unbeatable at Rio Tinto Stadium and facing a Minnesota team that is probably in the best run that they have ever got during their short span time in MLS and in the short 3-year span in MLS. So this is definitely a very interesting game, and this in some way is also a big game for both teams too, because for RSL, if they can actually win this game, then they would actually, I believe, move within 1 point of Minnesota, and that would make the Western Conference race even more exciting. But if Minnesota, of course, win, then they can definitely get further and further away from the playoff line. And really, I think if Minnesota can continue this hot streak that they are on, it's not really talk about whether or not if they're going to make the playoffs, but whether or not if we're going to actually have a playoff game at Allianz Field this season. And if that is the case, my oh my, I am actually very excited about that. Like, if you thought the atmosphere at Allianz Field in regular season game is crazy, wait till you see when playoff mode happen, if Minnesota does able to finish in the top 4 and gets to host a playoff game this season. But moving on into the next match is Vancouver. So Vancouver is taking on the Quakes, and Vancouver, yeah, they have really hit rock bottom in these last couple of weeks, as their record is now 4-8-10. Vancouver actually have the fewest win in the league this season. So after FC Cincinnati, of course, grabbed a victory over the Chicago Fire in last weekend's game, that means now Vancouver has officially definitely got the least amount of wins that any team in the league has. And I think of all the teams that I've been talking about how are kind of in the race for the playoffs, Vancouver might be the odd man out in terms of this tight playoff race in the Western Conference, because the way that you look at how things have gone, and it just feels like, this rebuild that they're trying to do is not really going very well for them. Things are definitely started to look very stale for Vancouver in terms of their chances of making the playoffs. I mean, I knew Vancouver probably wasn't going to make the playoffs, but seeing them kind of make noise in the beginning of the season and maybe kind of get into those playoff positions, yeah, I thought maybe they could be staying there and competing for those playoffs. Well, they're facing against a Quakes team that, of course, won 3-1 against the Galaxy in the last match. A very convincing 3-1 victory where they absolutely demolished the Galaxy. And the funny thing is, when I was watching El Tráfico tonight, I just had a feeling that this was going to be probably a close game, and that maybe the Galaxy won't look exactly like the way that they play against the Quakes. Boy, oh boy, that was exactly the case, and then some, because the way that the Galaxy play in that El Tráfico game compared to the one that they play against the Quakes, it looked like it was just two different teams, and it looked like the team that the Quakes play against the Galaxy was literally looked like a team that we are going to be facing in terms of the worst team in the Western Conference, to now what happened to the Galaxy tonight being kind of almost the best team in the Western Conference and beating the best team in the Western Conference. And speaking of the worst team of the Western Conference, that's what Vancouver is, and that's what the Quakes are going to be playing in this match. And in terms of the top assist leader, we have a four-way tie for 2 assists for Vancouver. Montero, Antnan, Aris, Inbom all tied with 2 assists for Vancouver, while Bangora currently have 1 assist. For the Quakes, Espinoza currently have 8 assists, while Eriksson currently have 5 assists. Vaco with 3 assists, Salinas with 3 assists, and Jackson Yule rounds off the list with also 3 assists. And, as I mentioned with the Quakes facing a last place team, and that, I want to say that this is a must-win game for the Quakes, even though it is a road game, and as I said before, I don't usually say that the Quakes have to have a must-win game on the road, unless I am super positive that we can get a win against a bad team, or the fact that we just had to win in this game in order to make it to the playoffs, and we have to win this road game. And this one is kind of right on the borderline of the fact that we are facing a very bad team, and a team that has just look like one of the worst team in the league in the last couple of weeks. But having said that, you never know with the Quakes. I mean, they can obviously this season, I know the Quakes have done much better on the road, but you never know. You never know if they are actually going to put in a good performance, and you also never know if they can actually able to put away their chances like that they probably should have done in most of the road games that they had this year. I mean, even in the 3-1 win that the Quakes had, they really struggled in terms of putting the ball into the back of the net, and it only took until the 61st minute for them to finally able to find the mark. So, yeah, this is definitely going to be an interesting game, but I know for a fact that if the Quakes want to improve their chances of making the playoffs, this is one of those games that they definitely win. And if they want to host a playoff game at Avaya Stadium, this is exactly the game that they have to win in order to do that. But moving on into the next match is the Sunday slate, which starts off with a I wouldn't say kind of a rivalry matchup, but in some way it kind of is, with Atlanta versus DC United. And in some way, this is kind of a bogey team for Atlanta for these last couple of years, where for whatever reason, DC always tends to have Atlanta's number, and it's shown in the beginning of the season where I think that's the first game of the season for both of these teams, and DC of course won that one 2-0 convincingly. Now Atlanta did won 5-0 against Houston at home, although that was a game that they were facing a Dynamo team that were down to 10 men for pretty much 90% of the game. And also, the man that got sent off in that game for Houston was Albert Velez, which was their most important player in that team, and that you knew that they were just going to absolute steamroll Houston once that sending off is going to happen. Well, DC, of course, they won 4-1 against FC Cincinnati, and that for the first time in a very long time, they actually scored more than a goal to able to get all 3 points. And, you know, the thing is, even though they finally are able to find their goal scoring form that they've been missing in the past couple of weeks, keep in mind, it's FC Cincinnati. And FC Cincinnati, for majority part of this season, has not been very good. And that their defense has been absolutely garbage for majority part of this season. So I wouldn't say that that is a victory that DC is going to be proud of and say that they are kind of back into a good form that they were in the beginning of the season. But we shall see how this game, of course, would turn out. And in terms, of course, the top assist leader, surprise, surprise, Pity Martinez is actually the top assist leader for Atlanta United. And despite the fact that there's just been ongoing talks of how he has kind of become a flop for Atlanta and that he hasn't really lived up to his potential, he's actually lead the team in terms of assists, and that he has 5 assists right now, and that there's no doubt that he has started to pick up a little bit. I mean, I know Pity Martinez, you know, he's not going to be kind of that goal scorer that you expect a record amount of signing from MLS is going to be, but he's kind of going to be kind of like that Miguel Almiron kind of player that, of course, have bunch of assists and give the ball to Joseph Martinez to score those goals. And we are kind of started to see a little bit of that, although, you know, most of the assists that he has so far this season hasn't really him just giving the ball to Joseph Martinez so that Joseph Martinez could just easily finish one off to give Atlanta a go in that situation. But yeah, he currently tops the list in terms of the top assist leader, although Gresso also currently has 5 assists, with Villalba currently with 3 assists, but he's currently injured right now, and that goes the same with Escobar, who has 3 assists and also is currently injured. And then you round up the top 5 with Joseph Martinez currently with 2 assists for Atlanta. For DC, Rootney currently leads the list with 7 assists. Jara is currently second with 5 assists. Moreno and Rodriguez tie at 3 assists, and Paul Arriola currently have 2 assists for DC United. And yeah, I mean, you know, for Atlanta, this has always been a bogey team for them for the first 3 seasons that they have been in MLS. But, you know, we'll see what happened in this game, and we'll see if, you know, what Atlanta did to Houston was that a shown of sign that they can be once again dominant in the league. I mean, so far this season, they have shown times that they can be the dominant force in the league, but then there are also times that they shown that they are still kind of in that slow start that they got in the beginning of the season, and that they really kind of stutter a little bit throughout the season, which I guess many teams is going to have that kind of problem throughout the year. But if you're Atlanta and a team that should be one of the best team, if not the best team in the league, that is something that you definitely don't want to see very often this season. Whereas for DC United, you know, we'll see if that 4 goals performance, like knowing now that they finally put up a big performance and finally scoring again, is this finally the time where they can be confident that they can once again score goals in game, and that they of course can find their attacking stride again for this upcoming game. But that being said, moving on into the next match is FC Cincinnati. So FC Cincinnati is taking on the red hot New England Revolution, who is 7-6-8, while FC Cincinnati currently have a record of 5-2-14, which is currently, I believe that's the worst record so far in the league. I know technically FC Cincinnati and Columbus have the same amount of wins, but I believe FC Cincinnati actually have more loss than Columbus had. so far this season. New England, of course, is unbeaten in 9 games, while FC Cincinnati, as I mentioned, lost 4-1 against DC United at home. Top assist leader for FC Cincinnati, Ledesma and Mane currently ties the list with 3 assists. Sayev currently have 2 assists, and that goes the same with Maddox and Lamar. For New England, Carlos Hill currently have 7 assists, with Pinea currently have 5 assists. Calcedo with 3 assists. Castillo also with 3 assists, and Buchanan with 2 assists for New England to round up their top assist leader chart. And, when you look at this game, it's pretty straightforward that New England is going to win this game because of the fact that they have just been red hot lately and just been rejuvenated as a team that is one of the most dangerous team in the Eastern Conference. Like, I think, with the Quakes being a team that is red hot in the Western Conference, in the Eastern Conference, it's really kind of New England that is kind of that team that has been on a red hot. And in some way, New England being red hot in the Eastern Conference is like saying that the Quakes are being red hot in the Western Conference too. Except New England actually have a really long unbeaten streak, and that they actually have not lost a single game ever since they actually decided to fire Brad Friedel, which, once again, as I emphasized many times before, what a difference does it makes when you decided to finally let go of your coach that clearly was incompetent in terms of the way that he was running this team, and also the front office as well. So, yeah, I expect New England to win this one pretty easily, but you never know. FC Cincinnati might put up a bit of a challenge, and maybe they can try to win a game at home and can find that form that they kind of had a couple of weeks ago when they had back-to-back wins. But with that being said, moving on into the next match of this match week is Orlando. So Orlando is taking on the Redbulls, and Orlando is another one of those teams that is trying to chase TFC for those playoff spots. Well, actually, they're technically chasing NYCFC, who's now in the 7th spot, but NYCFC actually have 3 games in hand over Orlando City, so there's no doubt that even if Orlando City surpass NYCFC, if they can win those games in hand, then it really doesn't matter, and that NYCFC will find themselves back above the red line. But they're going to be facing against the Redbulls, who their record is now 9-4-8, and they suffer that 3-1 loss against TFC away, while Orlando City drew 1-1 against the Portland Timbers. And then in terms of the top assist leader chart for Orlando City, unsurprisingly, Nani currently leads the team with 7 assists. Then you got Matinho and Mueller currently have 3 assists, and that goes the same with Kwan, also with 3 assists, and Dwyer, which, again, I should have wrote it on the board here, but he actually have 2 assists right now for Orlando City. For the Redbulls, you got Royer currently leads the team with 6 assists. Murillo currently have 5 assists. Jakowski, Cassier Jr., and Kaku are all tied with 3 assists with this team. And, certainly for Orlando City, this is going to be, this is definitely going to be a tough game for them because, well, they were able to survive a onslaught of Portland Timbers attack in the last game, and they kind of really just bunker and try to salvage a point in that game. They have to now have a short week and have to fly all the way across the other side of the country to come back home to play against the Redbulls. And home has definitely not been a very kind place for Orlando City this season, which is kind of odd because, Orlando City, I know in the previous season they tend to be not very good in the league, but they tend to always do well on the road. But this season, that is not the case, and it was also not the case in last season too, but that mainly because last season they basically just went through a death or spiral, and that, yeah, I'm pretty sure I don't really need to mention what happened last year to Orlando City fan, but in many ways, as I said, this is a very tough game for Orlando City because the Redbulls, now after that tough loss against TFC in a game that they thought that they know that they probably should have at least deserved a point or all 3 points in this game, considering the fact that they kind of outplayed TFC a little bit in that one. Wants to get all 3 points in this game against Orlando City, and that Orlando City has been able to find a little bit of a good form in the last couple of weeks. But the question is, can they be consistent in terms of that form, which has been one of the biggest problems they have this season so far. But finally, and save the best for last, is the Cascadia Derby. Seattle Sounders is taking on the Portland Timbers, with Seattle currently have a record of 10-5-5, while the Portland Timbers have a record of 7-4-8. And in the last 5 Cascadia meeting, which not include the playoffs, so not include the playoff series that they had last year, but in the last 5 Cascadia meeting, and also, by the way, when I mean not include playoff, I also mean that all the last 5 Cascadia meeting is only going to be league meetings that I mentioned, so it's also not going to be including in terms of the U.S. Open Cup. But in the last 5 Cascadia meeting, we got the Timbers or it was the Sounders winning against Portland 1-0, and actually hand Portland their first loss of the season at Providence Park in last season meeting. And then you got the Timbers going on the road to beat Seattle 3-2 in one of the meetings last year, and one of the free meetings that they had. And then it was the Timbers earlier in the season with a 1-0 win against the Seattle Sounders. They tied the latter part of the meeting in 2017 1 apiece, and they also tied the second of the latter part of the second of the free meetings that they had in 2017. Now, in terms of the last 5 Cascadia meeting at CenturyLink Field, Seattle actually has a very good record against the Timbers in terms of the Cascadia Derby whenever it's played at CenturyLink. But last year, they did suffer their first loss in 5 meetings when they lose 3-2 to the Portland Timbers at CenturyLink. Before that, it was a 1-1 draw between Seattle and Portland. Then Seattle, of course, won 1-0 against Portland in that meeting, won 3-1 against Portland, and won 2-1 against Portland in those last 5 Cascadia meeting at CenturyLink Field. But yeah, this is definitely going to be a very exciting kind of matchup. Obviously, Seattle, with them now getting most of their star power, or not just most of them, but all their star power back after most of them were on international duty, or they are currently with their team in Copa America and in the Gold Cup. This is definitely a very strong Sounders team, and they're facing against a Timbers team that also is a very strong Timbers team. But, in the last couple of games, they have definitely not kind of shown as a team that probably should not be in the third place of the power rankings. And that is, I think, one of the rarest time I actually use something from the power rankings and put it in the preview as an evidence of why they have not been very good. I mean, I usually never pay attention to the power rankings, but I know there's been a lot of people complaining about the fact that the Timbers are third in the power rankings, so I kind of do have to mention it a little bit. But like I said, the power rankings, I really don't care a lot about the power rankings, and thus this is why I kind of stopped doing the power rankings a couple of years ago, because it's just a rankings. I mean, it doesn't really mean that much. I mean, the only thing it means is probably in terms of bragging rights. But, we'll see if the Timbers can of course, kind of shake off in these last couple of games that they haven't been in their best form, and that they're going to have to do that against a Seattle team that certainly has started to find their form again, and maybe in some way could chase down LAFC. Who am I kidding? I don't think they're actually going to chase down LAFC, despite the fact that this team definitely has to be the best team in the Western Conference right now with the roster that they had. But there's no doubt that they could also trouble LAFC in terms of if that matchup, of course, would come up in the playoffs. But staying course in terms of this meeting, you know, again, it's a Cascadia derby. You know, you don't know exactly what's going to happen. And once again, we have two very good teams kind of facing off each other. And we shall see what can happen in terms of this matchup and what happened by the end of this matchup. And since this game actually kicks off late, most likely I am going to also have to do the review on Monday, and that I have to do the whole MLS Matchweek number 21 review on Monday too. But that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.